Hey guys, it's Maymay, and today we're making this super fun pillow cover. Now this is an envelope style pillow cover. I love this style because number one, you can make it in your sleep. It's really, really easy. And number two, it's just cute. I just think it looks nice and clean, and it doesn't have to have a zipper anywhere or anything. Love it. Okay, this flower is not a Dresden plate. I know that it's similar, but it is not a Dresden. I do have the ruler to make a Dresden plate and all that, but I was sitting there, I was like, you know what? You guys might not have that ruler. You don't need it. You need nothing fancy to do this. So let's go through and make this together. So step one is a charm pack. I love a charm pack. They're pre-cuts. It's easy to do. But if you don't have a charm pack, you just need 11 5x5 squares. This is a great scrap buster project because you're able to pull this out any old way you want. I want you to notice this does match because it's a charm pack. These do coordinate well together, but I'm making this for my grandchildren's room, and I'm really trying to use every single color under the sun in their room. Like, I'm not limiting myself to a single color because kids don't do that, right? So I'm gonna do this mix here, and then I'm thinking that on that other pillow I did yellow. I'm thinking on this one I'm gonna do this pretty blue. I think this will be so pretty as the background. And again, I'm not looking for matchy-matchy here. I'm looking for scrappy looking. So I'm gonna use this as my background. All right, so let me move these and I'll tell you what background pieces you need. Also, you see me picking these up like this. This is not my final layout. I've got to do some work to these. And rather than try to keep up with them in their order of how they're going to lay out now, there's another time when we'll do that. So for now, let's don't worry about that. Just pick these up, move them out of the way. This is made up. I made this pattern up, okay? I'm going to leave a pattern for you in the description so you can recreate this if you'd like. Okay, I've already had a change of plans, and that is no blue. We're going to do this purpley pink. So you need two pieces that are 19 by 19. Then you need one piece that's 19 by 25. Again, I just made this up, so those are my numbers. We won't need these two pieces right away, so I'm just going to take this one with me to the sewing machine, and we're going to do some prep on those charm pack squares. Do you guys like sneak peeks? This is for an upcoming video I cannot wait to do. This is going to be a quilt. I think for myself, I think I'm going to use this upstairs for me, but it is the Corey Yoder, what is this, a bloom? Collection. So if you like a sneak peek, this is coming soon. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to take out my little charm squares, and we're going to fold them in half and iron them just to establish the center. But here's what's important. Let's say your charm square has puppies or rainbows or dogs or something like that on it, and they go in a certain direction. You want to make sure when you're folding, that pattern reads this way, and you fold across it like so. This way your flower petal will have the pattern correct. I love not using a pattern because if you know me, I'm the worst at orientation, okay? So then what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold this down, and we're just gonna crease to get our centers. So just iron that to get your crease. And you wanna do that with every charm square. And then what you're gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and show you the steps, and then I'll cut away and do mine. Then we're gonna cut. Now, you might not be comfortable doing this way. You might want to make a mark and use that mark with some heat erasable ink or with chalk or something like that. This is going to work fine for me. All I've done, you can see here, I've laid my charm square on the grid where I just have a clean grid lined up to the edge. And at the bottom, I'm wanting to read an inch over. So I've got it at 4. 3 is going to be my number. And I want to take a ruler, and I want to go from 3 to that top right edge, okay? So I've got my ruler at 3 here, and it's ending on that top right edge. The most important part is that your fold lives here, okay? This is your open edge, and this is your folded edge. As long as you do that, you're fine. Now we're gonna cut this like so, and you'll see, if you've ever made a Dresden plate, this will be similar. Again, this is not a Dresden plate, but this will be similar, right? Does that like that tumbler block or whatever, kind of that look we're getting? So we're gonna do that to every single one of them. So let's do one more, just in case I didn't say anything just right. So establish where your pattern is. I feel like that's mine. Fold this guy in half like so, and then iron. Take this to your cutting mat. These little cutting mats right here. By the way, I will link everything that I can today that I'm using. I've also created, or am in the process of creating, an Amazon storefront for you guys. So when I get that completed, I'll put that in the description too. But this little guide that I can just move to where I'm working for these small projects is so great. I just love having this. So again, I'll link it. All right, so this is what we're doing. We need to get all of those done just like this. If you're a scrap saver, these might already be cut into something. I don't know. You could sew these together and just see what you get. You know what I'm saying? These are tiny. You could use them for applique. I don't know. I'm not that tiny of a scrap saver yet. Maybe one day, but think about that too. All right, off to do my charm packs. I wanted to tell you too, obviously I iron all mine and then do the cutting. I was just showing you one at a time in the video. Also, I want to kind of tell you where the need for this video comes from, or from these pillows come from. So my grandkids are coming for the summer, and I've moved my sewing room. I think I told you guys that I have a new studio set up, which I'll share with y'all as soon as I can. It is not ready for public consumption, trust me. But I am a person who buys a lot of throw pillows. Like, I'm always buying throw pillows. And then I have to store them. And that's just not the easiest thing in the world. Like, pillows take up a lot of space. I have vacuum sealed them and things like that. But after time, I'm just kind of like, why am I buying all these pillows when I could just be covering them? So I'm not even going to buy pillow inserts. I'm just going to cover with pillows I don't use, or just cover pillows I don't use anymore. So that's the plan here. I'm putting a little trundle bed in their room, and I thought it'd be cute to put some pillows on it. Again, I said earlier, I'm not limiting myself to color. That room is yellow. I think you know my sewing room was yellow. We talked about that before, and it's been yellow for a very long time, and I don't want to paint. And my granddaughter Emmy's favorite color is rainbow. So I'm like, there's no reason to limit myself to one color. Plus, we don't just have a granddaughter. We don't just have granddaughters. We have a grandson. And I don't want to have to do all pink or all blue or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, wow, I did that wonky, but it'll be fine. So, anyway, that's where this came from. So, if you're thinking, I don't really need a pillowcase pattern, to be honest with you, this is a really good pattern to have if you are like me and you buy a bunch of throw pillows. Because when you see how easy this goes together, also, if you need a gift idea, this is one to keep in your back pocket. I can see you making one of these for so many different occasions in so many different colors. It would be so easy to whip up in just a couple of hours if you needed a gift, or if you wanted to sell these. Oh my goodness, these would probably go so well at a craft table. Anyway, all right, last one, and then we'll start sewing. Okay, for sewing, you see I have my walking foot attached. I am too lazy to change this right now because I'm going to need it in a little bit anyway. So we're just going to leave it and we're going to go with it. Okay. We want to sew these guys. The widest part, that's the top, the smallest part is the bottom. We want to sew a 1/4 inch seam along the widest part. Now I will tell you that I discovered something about these guys. You do need to backstitch. So let me place my needle. And what I'm going to do is sew a stitch and then backstitch. I don't have to worry about backstitching at the end, but I do whenever I first start, okay? And I also want to chain piece. So I'm going to place this one, and then I'm going to backstitch. And I'm not going to worry about that end. That end gets completely hidden. We don't care about that end. And I'm just going to keep going with all of these the same way. So here's my little chain. I think this is so cute. And now we're just going to cut them apart. Let me show you what I do to cut them apart. So I have this little tool. It is by Clover. I'm not exactly sure what it's called. I will link it for you guys. And it has a blade, it has a razor blade at the top. And what's really cool about it, you see this dial? This dial has the numbers 1 through 12 on it. So you use number 1 until it gets dull, and then you turn it to 2 and use that till it gets dull. It's the best way to use up that rotary blade. And look how easy this is. You just go just like this. And you'll know when it's getting dull. Mine is getting dull because I'm actually having to put a little pressure on it. Normally you don't have to put any pressure and it just cuts right through that thread. So it's probably about time for me to switch mine to number 2. This is one of those gadgets where you're like, I do not need that gadget, but you do. Okay, for the next step, you'll see why it was important that we did that little back stitch there. What we're gonna do is, this is our folded edge, this is our seam. We're gonna do a little angle cut, and I'm gonna be honest with you. a pretty deep one. Do you see how my angle is? Let me do this. See how my angle is there? It's pretty sharp. You want to do that because it will lay down so much better when we turn these around, because we do have to turn these around. And it doesn't hurt a thing to get a lot of that out of there, a lot of that bulk. So we're just going to go to every one of these guys and cut that out. And look, you can cut your thread at the same time. Don't cut your actual thread. You know, I'm cutting about a 1/16 inch away from the seam at the back, but you will see what a difference this makes in just a second. And I'll also show you why you have to backstitch. Okay, before we flip this guy around and iron it and all that, we have to do one more thing. I discovered that my cut was not perfect. Like, I should have done a more drastic angle cut, and it caused me to have to do a pleat. However, rather than changing the pattern, the pleat is super cute, so I'm going to keep it. So I'm going to show you what we do next here, okay? So this is if you want to make it just like I'm making it. If you don't want to do this pleat, you're going to have to take another 1/4 inch from this edge, and I haven't worked that one out yet. I can if you want me to, but I think this pleat looks really cute. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to come right here, and I'm going to make a mark a 1/4 inch away from that fold. So I've got this lined up on the fold. I'm going to make myself a mark at a 1/4 inch. All right, there's my 1/4 inch mark. I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to put it on the 1/4 inch mark, okay, right here. Then I'm going to take the other end of my ruler and I'm going to slide till 2 inches on the edge. Do you see that? So I've got 2 inches at the fold and this at the 1/4, and this is going to be the pleat I'm going to sew in. So I'm taking 1/2 inch out here. And again, I could have edited that over here, but the pleat is super cute. So we're going to do that on every one of these guys. This seems fiddly. It is not. And honestly, you could totally eyeball this, which I did on most of mine, because this guy is not perfect. And if you don't know that about me, I don't do perfect. I do pretty close. All right, let's do all of them. Okay, so rather than setting up the camera, I just went to the sewing machine and did this, and I'm gonna show you what I did. So I put this into the sewing machine at the bottom, and I put my needle down into my green line or to my pin line, and then I sewed to the point and then backstitched at the point. You don't have to worry about backstitching here. That's going to get covered up with another seam, but this needs to be stable. So I did that on every one. I've already got that done. So I sewed up and backstitched just on that angle. Then what I want to do, and you could do this with a rotary blade if you rather, I found that taking this bulk out right here was really good, just for the little pleat to kind of show up better. So then I'm just going to run through and trim all of that. I think this may be overkill. On one of them, I did this, okay? When I say one of them, on half of the flower, I did this. On the other half, I didn't, and I don't think you can really see it, but if you're here, let's just go ahead and cut that bulk off. Again, this is a project I was doing, you know, for myself, that I realized, hey, this is kind of quick and will make a good gift idea. So that's why I'm bringing it to you. So you get the part where I'm like, don't do the mess ups. Tell me in the comments, do you just try projects and see how it goes, or do you have to have a pattern and know it's gonna work? We all are different, and then some places I like a good pattern. You know, I'm never gonna, I don't know that I'm ever gonna be a person that tries to make my own clothes without a pattern. I do wanna make clothes, but I'm scared to do it without a pattern. But I might try it someday. I see other people do it and they're pretty brave. Now we're to my favorite part. This is the part where we get to see what we've done. Okay, so now we're gonna open this guy up, okay? And do you see this, how this works right here? This guy, I want to iron this down. I'm taking the time to do this. You don't have to, but I'm gonna lay this flat and iron this seam open. Just like that. Then we're gonna turn this around. So I'm gonna poke that piece up like so. This is why, two things, you want a back stitch here to hold that stitch together, and secondly, you wanna do that harsh angle cut to get that bulk out of the way. That is what helps us in this portion get such a good point at the top. Once you've got it laid down flat, we're gonna iron it down. Now I'm gonna do this again, do not worry. I will show you this another time. But that is your petal. So you do a little prep work, but once you do, the petal is made and it is so cute. Look how easy that is. All right, let's go back to this guy. Let's do another one. So I open it up to that point, and you can use, this is what I love, you can use that pleat and this seam to know that you're in the center. Then you're gonna lay this out. You could finger press this and just go with it like that. I just think I get a better turn with it flat. Then I put my finger at the point and pull around. And if you're not getting your point perfectly straight, take one of these guys and just push it in there. Don't over push because you can push that seam out too much. All right, and then when we go to flatten it, again, use that dart or that pleat to your advantage to find the center. Flatten this guy out and iron him down. So that's what we're looking for. Let me get all my other petals to this point. Okay, for the next section, what you want to do is you want to lay these guys out the way you want them to be in your flower. So I just kind of did half and half section. So like that looks good. That may be a little bit too much floral close together. Let's put that guy there. And then I just laid out my second section. And there won't be a true second. You're just going to have, you know, one area and then another area. And the reason I say that is because you can't get a perfect half. I know I'm going off screen, but I think you're getting the idea. All right, so that actually looks pretty good to me. These two are a little bit close, these tulips. I think I'll move this guy, like so. All right, now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start with this guy. He'll be my first one I sew to this one, then I'll sew this one to this one, this one to this one, and this one to this one. So there's a stack. Then I'll come this way. I'll sew this one to this one, this one to this one. I know you can't see, let me slide them up. This one to this one, this one to this one, and this one to this one. So I just make myself two piles. It's just easier to manage them. Then when I get to the sewing machine, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna pick up the first one, okay? And the second one, I'm thinking, okay, I pay attention. I want my seam here, so I flip this guy over. And the only place we have to connect them is right here, 1/4 inch seam. Once we get those connected, we'll open this one up and it'll look something like that. We'll take our next petal that goes here, same thing, and we go all the way around till we get our 2 half moon shapes done. Then I put my half moon shapes together. Let me sew them and get the 2 half moons, and then I'll show you how we put that together. Look how cute. So this is the 2 pieces, and like I said, they're not even, but there's just 2 pieces we're gonna sew together. If you had a charm square pack, you could get 3.5 pillows out of this. So if you are thinking about selling them, I mean, it's not your base fabric, but for this part, it's pretty good. All right, now I'm gonna do is go to the machine and sew these together at their 1/4 inch seam. Also, while you're sewing, if you start to worry about your seam, try to keep these 1/4 inch. But the beauty of this pleat is when we go to applique this down, if we have an area that's not laying great, we can add to that pleat and it'll fix things right up. All right, let me sew it together. In the true spirit of scrap busting, I'm gonna show you what I did. It's not right, but it's gonna work, okay? These are some strips of batting that I had left over. I need a 20 inch by 20 inch piece of batting. And this is a pillow for the playroom. I mean, if this was a pillow for my living room, I would still do the same thing. I took these strips and I went to my machine and I stitched them together. I do know, I have seen people before do this where they lay the batting side by side and then they zigzag along the seam. And that would work, but I can't zigzag with my walking foot on and I'm just too lazy to change it. Honestly, I've got somewhere to be soon. I've got an appointment, so I'm just trying to speed it up a little bit. But this is gonna be fine. And I'm not really doing a traditional quilt on this. I quilted my first pillow. I took the time, I placed this guy down on the batting and I went over to the sewing machine and I did a little quilting pattern. And by the time I was done, you couldn't even see it. By the time I had the flower on, you couldn't see the quilting that I did. So I'm not gonna quilt this one. I'm just gonna let the flower, the applique, quilt it down. So I am gonna iron this because I didn't iron it when I cut it. Okay, so this is ready for the flower. And here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take the flower and place it down. What I did on my first pillow, same thing I'm gonna do here. I'm just going to choose some points that I'm going to use to measure, okay? And then I took my tape and I just kind of went, see how these points are kind of in the same place? That point is kind of in the top center. I can use those to my advantage. So if I go right here, I'm at 2 1/4, pretty close. Let's go check the other petal. On this petal, I need to come to the left because I'm 1/4 inch off. So I'm gonna go this way. And here's what I'll tell you. I know this about like the naked eye. Most people don't see 1/8 inch. Most people can see 1/4. So if you're 1/4 inch off, you might wanna fix it. If you're 1/8 inch off, I wouldn't stress too much. I'm gonna split that difference. Get that about like that. And honestly, don't stress too much anyway. It takes the fun out of it. All right, let's put this one at the top and see where we're at. We're 2 inches from the top. At the bottom, I'm 2 inches at the bottom. I'm gonna let that be where my flower lives. All right, then I took some pins and I pinned down every petal, especially because I'm not quilting the back on this one. On the other one, I had quilted this pattern underneath, so it was really stable. But I'm gonna pin down every petal, and I will probably go in and add a pin or two here and out there just to hold everything down. The beauty of the way I did this flower is it doesn't have to be super flat. What I love about that is if it has some wrinkles or some puckers, that's fine, because I'm not trying to make it perfectly flat on the pillow. I actually want it to have some body, so I'm okay if there's a little bit of a puff here and there. I feel like this would make the cutest table runner if you just did like 5 of these flowers and did a table runner. Oh, that'd be so cute. I may have to do it. If you want me to, tell me in the comments. Gosh, as I pin, I keep thinking, or placemats. Wouldn't this be cute placemats? Like a flower at every spot? Really cute. And then when you put the plate down, it would look like a, oh, okay, there's another idea. All right, it's time to go to the sewing machine. I'm gonna show you where I'm gonna sew. It's gonna be too hard for me to get the camera in really close. I think I will try. When I did my other flower, this is what I did. I'm gonna start here. I put my needle down here. I sewed about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam, up this petal, across this petal, down this petal, and then down to the center. Then I crossed over, I sewed up the petal, down, then I crossed over and I sewed up the petal down. I don't care about this part right here because the center is gonna hold that down, but that worked really well, just kind of, and it even made it where I didn't have to cut threads. I did one thread continuously all the way around. Okay, so let me show you how I'm gonna do this part. This is my walking foot. I have this section here where the clear plastic meets the metal edge. There's a line. You might not can see it on camera, but I can see that right there. That's gonna be my guide for following the seam and the edge of the flower, okay? Now, I also want you to notice my needle is not centered. I actually moved my needle 1/8 of an inch away from that mark on my foot. So that is gonna help me get my 1/8 of an inch stitch. I don't know if your machine does that. It probably does. Then I'm going to stitch. So watch this. So just following here, down to almost the end, to about 1/8 of an inch away from the end. Then I'm gonna lift up my presser foot, leaving my needle down and turn, okay? Now I can continue that stitch out. I want to be almost 1 inch away from the end of the petal, lift my presser foot, turn, put it down. I'm gonna move this pin, I don't need it now. Keep going. Lift up, turn again, and this time I'm gonna sew down. Lift up that presser foot, turn it, and I'm gonna kind of drive myself to the other petal, just a couple of stitches. That may be enough. I'm gonna turn and see. Yep, that's gonna do it. So 2 little stitches did it. And then straight up again. Now you don't have to do it this way. You don't have to go up every petal like I'm doing. You can just sew down the petals themselves because we are gonna put a center on here and that'll hold the middle down for you. But I think it's kind of cute. All right, that's what I do. Let's go around and sew this guy all the way on. Okay, so here is the petals all stitched down. And I wanna show you what I meant by kind of the body and the life it gives. See how it's got a little lift here and there, a little texture? I love the petals lifted like that. And that may just be a me thing, but I think it looks really cool. Also, how easy is this so far? All right, the next step is just as easy. Okay, let's talk about the center. Now, I know we didn't need fancy tools and you don't, but I happen to have these circle rulers. I bought them a while ago because this is the kind of thing I like to have. I never know when I need a circle or an odd shape, a hexagon, something like that. So these are just kind of good to have. This is a 9-inch circle, okay? And I didn't have one smaller that didn't get too small, didn't go inside my flower, so I'm going with 9-inch. So I have cut for myself 2 pieces, and I want to talk to you about this, okay? So for my original pillow, what I did was I used a green stripe on the top and this white color in the back. I need 2 pieces because we're going to sew this together, turn it around, and then sew it down. That'll clean our edges up without any work. But I want to caution you about something. If you're using a pattern on the top, a print on the top, don't use a print back here because they could compete with each other. You could see the other one through it. And this way, just by using this simple white back here, I don't have to worry about that. I do need to iron these. This is why this is such a good scrap buster project. If you're like me and you end up with offcuts from quilts or from bags or whatever you're doing, these those solid color, especially white offcuts, work out perfect. This is a 9-inch circle. If I were you, I'd look at a paper plate, a bowl, a good size bowl, as long as you can get 1/2 inch to 1 inch around this guy, you're okay. Because we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam and turn this around. So let's talk about that too. How we're going to make this happen. This has little hearts. I got to try to keep them straight. How we're going to make this guy happen. I am not an applicator, or at least I don't think I am. I am this kind of applicator, okay? We're going to sew these 2 pieces together, leaving us a gap to turn these around. So we're going to sew them right sides together. My white fabric doesn't have a right or wrong side, but this one does, the top one does. So we're going to sew these together with a 1/4 inch seam. And to be honest, I went a little more than a 1/4 on this one, and I'll tell you why. When I'm leaving a gap for something, I want to make sure you can see me in camera. When I'm leaving a gap here, I'm going to leave this gap about 2 inches, not super big. I don't like to have only a 1/4 inch to turn under when it's time to close this down. It just never seems enough. So what I'm probably going to do is sew myself about 3/8 to 1/2 inch seam. Then I'll trim out, leaving a 1/4 inch, but I'm not going to trim here. I'll show you that in a second. But I want to explain why I'm going to do a thicker seam here. So let's do close to 1/2 inch all the way around, leaving a 2-inch gap, back stitch here and back stitch here so that when we turn it around, it stays nice and firm. Okay, so let me show you this. So I did back stitch at both places. And what I'm going to do is come in right where my back stitches end. And I'm just going to go around this circle and I'm going to trim this down to a 1/4 inch all the way around. It won't be a 1/4. I'm just trimming close to the stitches without cutting through the stitches. When I get back to my opening, right at my back stitches, I'm going to roll off. I'm going to lay this down so you can see what this looks like. It almost looks like a hot air balloon. See how I've got that here and I went around? This is because if I cut this even all the way around, I get a terrible turn under right here and it just bugs me. So this is my fix for that, okay? So I'm going to open this guy up and we're going to start turning it right side out. This is why we backstitch. In case you're new to sewing, the reason we backstitch is if I didn't do that here, when I started to do this, my seam would unravel and we don't want that to happen. Once you got this done, take a tool, stick it in there, take something. This that I'm using, you want to laugh? This is a piece from my air fryer. It's from the rotisserie basket that you can put in there that I never use in there. I have used it, but I find that it's not something I use very often. So this stick is perfect. I'll show you why it's perfect. The reason I started using it in this application is I went to get a skewer out of my drawer because I'd seen where you could use a skewer for this. There's also a tool for this. There is a tool. But look, it's one of these. And see how it's kind of blunt on the ends? It works perfect. So that's what I use. So use what you got, right? Okay, then kind of roll this out. Kind of roll your seam out nice and even. And let's go ahead and iron this again. I decided to use white for the center of this flower because I felt like the flower and the purple had gotten a little samey, and I think this will help. Okay, now got the wrinkles out there. Now what I'm going to do here is I want to tuck this under, and see, by leaving myself some fabric, this is much easier to do. And I also struggle because I want it to keep its roundness, and this gives me the fabric to make that happen. I do have to kind of just fidget with it till I can get it done. It's a little flat, but it's not too bad. Let's iron that down. It'll kind of go away in the sewing. All right, so now you can see all we needed this to do is cover our ends of our petals to close them in. And all I'll do now is take this to the sewing machine and sew it down. Now I will show you this. I did this before. Kind of measure, like go to one of your petals. This is 2 1/4. This is 2, so we probably need to come this way a little bit and maybe check the top too, just to be sure. That's 2 1/2. That may need to move. It definitely does, needs to come down. Because you'll be sad if you don't, especially I'm not over the top of mine. So let's go from middle of petal and look. Middle of petal is 3 3/4. Middle of petal is, ooh, not 3 3/4. I keep wanting to bring that closer to me. All right, so get it measured like you like it, pin it down, sew it down. It's so funny, as I was sewing that and hating this bottom, I remembered that I could have done this in a way that I sewed these 2 pieces together and cut a slice in the middle and turn them around. I could have done that. I don't think on this white I would want to do that because I'd probably see the slice through it. I just don't love that. But you know what? Over time and with washing, that's gonna soften it. Anyway, there we go. So if you want to do it where you sew this guy together, then cut the back layer and turn it around so your round is perfect, that's another option. Okay, now I'm going to trim off my excess batting. You could do this with your rotary blade, but I'm at this table, so I'm just going to do it with my scissors. So I'm going to go around and get my batting trimmed all the way down even to my purple fabric. Now for the part that makes this so easy. So you've got your 19-inch square. This is your second one, what you were thinking of as your backer. Then you have a 19 by 25-inch piece, okay? So it's a little bit bigger than your 19 by 19, which is the size of our pillow right now, okay? This piece is these 2 pieces are what is gonna make this the easiest pillowcase. And here's what you need to do. Learn this section right here. Keep this in your backpack for when you need a present, okay? Because this is so easy. All right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take that 19 by 25-inch piece and we're gonna fold it in half, just like this. And we're going to iron this down, okay? Get ourselves a crease. That was already, the way I cut it was on the fold anyway, so that works really well. All right, so that's 19 by 25 folded and ironed. Now we're gonna take 19 by 19, fold it and iron it. Pay attention to your pattern if your pattern matters, okay? We want the fold in the center of the pillow. So if you have a pattern, you want it to read this way, okay? Fold this and crease it. Now we're gonna take both of these pieces to the sewing machine, and where we folded them, you're gonna just run a little seam right down the side, just a top stitch seam, 1/8 to 1/4 inch, and you wanna do that on both of them on their fold. Don't worry about their open ends. We'll get back to those in a second. Now this part will seem weird, but you're not gonna have to do this inside out. You're gonna do this right side out. So I'm gonna turn this guy over. So I'm putting the right side down. Look how pretty our flower looks on there, isn't that cool? Okay, right side down. Then you're gonna take your 19 by 19 piece that's folded in half and stitched along the edge, and you're gonna line it up on one side. You can pick your side, it really doesn't matter. Line it up on one side, okay? Then take your other piece that is the bigger piece, the 19 by 25, and line it up on the other side. Now you can decide which way you want this to go, okay? This is now overlapping. Do you see how that overlaps about 2 inches? Not a whole lot, about 2 inches. You can have this piece show on the outside, or you can have the longer piece show on the outside. This is how it's gonna look, the way you're doing right now, because we're not turning this around, okay? So for me, I think I'm gonna take this guy and put it under my longer piece, and that way my seam runs right down the middle. I did not do that on my first one. My first one, it overlaps. I kinda wanna see the difference so I can choose which one I like, and I'll show you too. So I've got my seam running right down the middle, and it's gonna overlap on the inside. Now what I'm gonna do is take this to the machine, and I'm gonna stitch it down together. I will use almost 1/2 of an inch, not quite a half, but between 1/2 and 1/4, because I need to make sure I catch every edge. So you want to pay attention and make sure you get every piece in. So let's go sew it together. So now you can see I've sewn it together and I've caught every edge. Now at this point, you want to trim the raw edge even all the way around. So what you want to do, and I'm going to do this too, is take this to your rotary blade. And you want to, I'll use a small one to show you. You want to lay your 1/4 of an inch line on your seam and square this up with a 1/4 of an inch coming out this way. Because in a minute, we're going to bind it similar to how we do a quilt, but not exactly, because I'm going to cheat that too. But I'm going to go to my rotary trimmer and I'm going to cut this a 1/4 of an inch away from the seam so it's nice and neat. Okay, it's time for binding. And I know this is like not matching. However, it's what I wanted to do. I'm leaving some buffalo check in their room, and I thought this would be cute to have this periodically as the trim, and I really like it. So here's what I did. I cut 2-inch strips of the binding, and I didn't measure this, the reason as far as length, because I cut the width of fabric, and then whatever I have left over just goes into a scrap bin that I have. And what I'm gonna do is fold this in half, and I think I'm gonna put it to the bottom. Yeah, this is the bottom. Do you see where my opening is there? That's the bottom. So I'm gonna put this about like this. And I like to just, you could clip this with Wonder Clips, or you could use pins here, whatever. I like Wonder Clips for this because it's easier. I'm gonna clip this into place. And when I go to sew it, I wanna leave this spot free so I can connect them when I get back around. But what I'm gonna do is, with my seam binding folded in half, so my fold is here, my open edge is here, I'm just gonna run around and pin this down. And to be honest, I don't pin the whole thing on. And the reason is, when I get to the sewing machine, when I get to these corners, I have to do some fancy footwork anyway. So all we're gonna do is just hold this side down for me to sew to get started, and then we'll just move around the whole piece as we go. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sew down a 1/4 of an inch, attaching the binding to the front of my pillow, okay? And when we get to the corner here, I'll show you what we do next. All right, so I'm close to the end of the pillow. I can see it right here. What I like to do is sew till I'm about a 1/4 of an inch away from that edge. Then I lift up my presser foot and I turn and I sew to the point. I sew to the corner and sew off. That's how I do it. Then I'll cut it loose. Then I'm gonna take this piece, my seam binding, still folded, okay? And I'm gonna turn it back so that it's even along the bottom. And then, do you see how this is crossing over here? We're gonna leave that there. I like to kind of do this. Then I'm gonna pick this up and turn it back. We're kind of making like a envelope corner turn situation. We're just getting everything nice and even there. Take your time on these corners. You only have to do 4, you know what I'm saying? We'll get through it. All right, so I've got that laid nice and flat. Then I'll turn this under the foot and I'll sew that same 1/4 inch all the way down. Okay, I'm at the bottom again, so it's lifted up. I'm gonna sew off the edge, cut it loose, and make the turn. Let's make the turn again together. So you see how we've sewn off the edge. I'll turn this back so that it's nice and even at the bottom. I like to stick my fingers there, lay that edge down, and then line up the rest. Just like that, and then sew again. I feel compelled to say this to you guys. You may like to start your binding from the back, where I started mine from the front. You can do you on that, whatever is comfortable for you. Also, what I'm about to show you here is not how I close a traditional quilt. This is how I'm gonna do this pillow, okay? All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlap these guys about 2 inches. So this guy starts the stitching here. I've got about 2 inches there. I'm going to cut to about here, okay? All right, so I've smoothed this guy out. I'm going to turn it up once and twice, and that's going to hide my edge, okay? I'm going to lay this guy over it, and I'm going to turn it once and then twice, and that's going to hide my raw edges. That'll get them wrapped in. Then I'm just going to sew this down. I want to make it clear that is not how you do a quilt, okay? You don't want to do a quilt this way, but this is a pillow. And when I turn this over, you're only going to see the one little seam right here, so it's not that big of a deal, but I would not do a quilt that way. All right, now what we want to do is we want to turn this around, okay? If you're a person who wants to cut these corners, you can cut those corners. We're going to turn this guy around, all the way around. Then what I like to do is I like to lay it down and look from the back side as I flip this over, and I like to pin it down, or not pin it, but clip it down, just like this. And these corners especially, turn those over, wonder clip them into place. Now, if you only give yourself 2 inches, which is what I did here, you don't have a lot. You might want to do 2.5 if you don't like to fuss with this. This is going to be a very tight binding on the back. So what I'll do is I'll get this pinned into place, and then I will run around and stitch it down. So here it is all bound and ready to go, and this is the pillow I'm putting in it. This is an older pillow that I have. And what I'm gonna do is reach back here into the back, and I'm just gonna start stuffing this pillow in. This guy will hold, your pillowcase will hold like an 18 by 18 form. And I don't really know what size this pillow is I'm stuffing in it. It's gonna be a lot because it's a heavy one. Okay, there's the back of it. I have beat this pillow up to get it in here because it's so big, but look how good it looks on the front. And this pillow that I put in here is a like a feather. See how it squishes, kind of a feathery pillow. And I don't have it in right because I got to get these corners right, but for showing y'all, there you go. I'll work on that some more. Let me get the second one. So this is my other pillow for the room. I love the colors. Look how cute the colors are together. Like, I didn't want any specific matchy nothing, only the trim to match. I love that. But I want to show you this. On the back of this one, I left my overlap to this side, and I kind of like that better than putting in the middle, because with this pillow, and look, it's doing it here, because with this guy, it's too puffy and it's wanting to separate. I really wish I'd put it on the other side. Also, I think I'm going to change the pillow out in this one. This pillow is too much. Can you see how much it's trying to, it's one of those big, thick Rae Dunn pillows, so I'll probably change that one out. But I love them, and this is what's going to go on the bed. I love how cute these are. I think they'll like them too. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me show you this. This one I quilted. Can you see those little lines? Barely you can see them in there. This one I didn't. I just don't think you need to spend the time doing that quilting unless you just want to, because by the time you put the flower on, you're all good to go. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. These are super quick. I did these in like maybe 2.5 hours. Super quick, super fun. Be sure to subscribe. Thank you for the love on the channel. I'm so appreciating you guys. Don't forget about my paper crafting channel, Maymay Made It. Go check me out over there. And until next time, bye now.